Synthesis of Kundalini teachings. #Sources. 1. Itzhak Bentov. 2. Dan Winter. 3. Dr. Joe Dispenza. Introduction to Kundalini. Q. What is the scientific name of the Kundalini awakening? The scientific name of Kundalini is sensory motor cortex syndrome. Q. For Itzhak Bentov. Why should we seek to attain Kundalini? Kundalini is the evolution of our nervous system. The Kundalini is a much larger concept in which planetary and spiritual forces come into play. When you awaken Kundalini, your nervous system is in sync with the frequency of the planet Earth, called Schumann frequency. Q. What are the 3 ways to awaken Kundalini? There are 3 ways to achieve Kundalini. The first way is achieving Kundalini by accident. Then you have great chances of being diagnosed for schizophrenia because of the symptoms. The second way is achieving Kundalini by actively working by yourself upon Kundalini activation. When doing so, you also learn the exercises allowing you to dissipate the stress existing in your body and avoid the occasional schizophrenia symptoms associated with Kundalini awakening. The third way is by receiving the Shakti Pat from a teacher. Shakti Pat is a phenomena looking similar to receiving the Holy Ghost from a Christian priest. The Shakti Pat activates your Kundalini automatically for you. Q. For Itzhak Bentov. What is the reason of spontaneous Kundalini awakening? The spontaneous cases of Kundalini may be attributed, among other things, to periodic exposure to certain mechanical or acoustical vibrations in our normal environment, which will cause the sequence of symptoms to arise. This has been shown by a biofeedback technique utilizing a pulsating magnetic field around the head. When people are exposed to frequencies of about 4 or 7 Hz for prolonged periods of time, as may happen simply by repeatedly riding in a car whose suspension and seat combination produce that range of vibration, or being exposed for long periods of time to these frequencies caused, for instance, by an air conditioning duct, the cumulative effect of these vibrations may be able to trigger a spontaneous Kundalini sequence in susceptible people who have a particularly sensitive nervous system. The 13 stages of Kundalini awakening. Stage 1. During your meditation, you follow the right exercise to generate a standing wave within your heart aorta at a frequency 7.38 Hz. Q. What is the purpose of gathering orgasm/orgone energy at your tailbone? I would personally recommend practicing some tantric exercises which aim to transfer the energy of orgasm/orgone towards the sacrum bone before any of your Kundalini sessions. This is the way of Tantra. People have been raising Kundalini for thousands of years efficiently using this way. At the 3 lower chakras along the spine and their glands you have life creative energy normally used for reproduction. 4. The purpose of cultivating Kundalini. Instead of releasing this energy in ejaculation, we draw this energy towards the tailbone so that it may gradually flow up with the electrically conductive cerebro-spinal fluid to the brain. Frequent pumping up the spine canal to the high brain will ignite the high glands and the DNA. Q. For Itzhak Bentov and Dan Winter. What is the exercise that should be done in order to awaken the Kundalini? Step 1. You must reach first the state of total relaxation and heart-brain entrainment. To achieve that, please do for 5 minutes the right state prayer. Kundalini has measurable harmonics in the phonon low frequencies, which show up on measuring devices. When we feel the emotion of passionate love, the frequencies within our heart are similar to the frequencies of Kundalini. When these identified low frequencies are cohering within the heart, thanks to the right state prayer, for example, the cerebrospinal fluids are pumped along the sacrocranial pump. Step 2. You must now switch your binaural beats to listen to binaural beats at the Schumann frequency of 7.83 Hz. Alternatively, you may switch to listen to Dan Winter Therapy binaural beats. Available in his mobile applications. https://craniosacral-app.com. Step 3. You must switch your breathe pattern to a breathe pattern which generates waves having frequencies similar to the Schumann frequencies within the heart aorta. Then you must breathe so that the heart aorta frequency may start to entrain the frequency of the rest of the body. To achieve this goal, you have 2 choices. Choice 1. You breathe at a pattern of 7 Hz using the resonance breathing method. To do that, breathe in for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, then repeat the same cycle. After a few minutes of practice, you stop breathing for a long period of time, then you restart to breathe following the same resonance breathing pattern. You repeat the same cycle during the length of your session. Choice 2. You perform the caduceus breathe repeatedly during the length of your session. The caduceus breathe is a breathing technique developed by Dan Winter in which you gradually reduce your breathe cycle following the golden mean ratio pattern before reaching the point when you stop your breathe completely. You then hold your breathe for as long as you can to allow eventually the Kundalini to rise. This breathing technique is found in the mobile applications that Dan Winter offers on his website, https://craniosacral-app.com. Step 4. You finish your session by practicing the microcosmic orbit exercise. The meditation called the microcosmic orbit must be used to make rotate the magnetic, microwave, and UV broad spectral currents, also called Kundalini, from the brain back down the spine in order to avoid schizophrenia. Q. For Dr. Joe Dispenza, what exercise should be done in order to awaken the Kundalini? As an alternative to the exercise above, the Dr. Joe Dispenza offers some guided meditations that you may use in order to awaken Kundalini on his website, https://drjoedispenza.com. Q. Whatever the exercise you choose to do, what are optional steps to undertake for the success of your meditation? Meditate under a gold or copper pyramid having the same proportions of the Pyramid of Giza. Clean from your environment electro-smog using orgonite devices. Do a Agni Hotra to make your environment charge coherent. Do the meditation at the right time and at the right place as you were taught in my podcast number 4 called Accessing the Zero-Point Field. Q. What are the hands used for in the practice of sacrocranial therapy? In the sacrocranial work, human touch is used to focus charge in the hand and the negentropic human attention to align the waves, both liquid and electrical, within the spine. This alignment produces what is directly felt as a STLL pointing. The still point, or movement to lock into phase all waves of different length, produces a sorting of the waves into coherence within the spine, thus producing a spin path to the 0 point in touch, directly helping to sort emotion, healing and raising Kundalini in the spine. When we touch non-destructively and with intent, we restore symmetry, we invite harmony into the body. We create STLL pointing, and thus, we allow for peace in the body. One peaceful cell influences all its neighbors in all directions. Q. Can the sacrocranial massage be accomplished by using precise series of sound waves? The therapy binaural beats affect the cerebrospinal fluids as would do a sacrocranial massage, most importantly when listening to it under a copper or gold pyramid. What is accomplished in the cerebrospine fluids by the hands during sacrocranial therapy is accomplished by the movement of series of standing waves in the body generated using the sound wave frequencies of Dan Winter's sacrocranial app binaural beats. Q. Why should you clear electro-smog from your environment for successful Kundalini generation? Communication microwaves such as Wi-Fi are detrimental to your bliss and Kundalini. Stage 2. During your meditation, the generated standing wave travels along the heart aorta. Below is a representation of the standing waves traveling along the heart aorta system. Q. During your meditation, what guarantees the formation of the standing wave in the heart aorta? During your Kundalini meditation, at each moments during which you stop breathing and keep your body completely still, the standing wave can be formed in your heart aorta without any destructive interference. Stage 3. During your meditation, the standing wave within your heart aorta propagates and entrains the rest of your body and your cerebrospinal fluids. Q. For Dan Winter and Dr. Joe Dispenza, what is the physiology of the cerebrospinal fluids track carrying the Kundalini energy from the sacrum bone to the brain? The sacrum bone is at the base of the vertebral column looking like an upside-down triangle. Then above it you have the vertebral column, whom 33 vertebrae lead straight to the skull. The central nervous system consisting of the spinal cord and the brain controls and coordinates all the other systems of the body. Above the vertebral column, the closed system of the brain generates the cerebrospinal fluid. Q. For Dan Winter and Dr. Joe Dispenza. What are the functions of the cerebrospinal fluids? The cerebrospinal fluid bathes the entire brain and also the spinal cord. The 4 functions of the cerebrospinal fluid are: first, it gives buoyancy and makes the nervous system float for protection. Second, it transports nutrients, neurotransmitters, hormones, and other chemicals between parts of the CNS. Third, it enhances conductivity of electrical charges in the brain. Fourth, it is the fluid upon which the Kundalini energy gradually flows towards the brain. Q. For Dan Winter and Dr. Joe Dispenza. What is the nature of the electrical discharge generated in the spinal cord during Kundalini? The cerebrospinal fluid is made of proteins and salts that are in a liquid solution. The 2 ingredients are the recipe for electrical charges, therefore the cerebrospinal fluid contains charged molecules. Q. For Dan Winter and Dr. Joe Dispenza. What is the role of the breath in making the cerebrospinal fluids circulate along the spine? The cerebrospinal fluid makes every 12 hours a full cycle, passing through the 4 ventricles in the brain, going all around the brain, then coming back along the spine to the sacrum. Your breathe rhythm makes your spine flex, and this motion pushes the cerebrospinal fluid move along the spine. During the inhalation, first, as you inhale, the sacrum bones bend and flex back, making the sutures all along the spine and the skull open up a little bit. Second, this movement makes the cerebrospinal fluid drains down from the brain because it contains a little bit more volume. At the same time, the sacrum pushes the cerebrospinal fluid upward by propagating a wave in the fluid from below. Third, therefore inhalation creates a cyclical flow of the cerebrospinal fluid along the spine from the tailbone to the brain and back. Inhalation also emphasizes the sympathetic system activity. During the exhalation, now, as you exhale, the sacrum bone bends and flexes forward and the sutures of the spine are being closed. Second, the exhalation stimulates the system activity. Stage 4. During your meditation, the standing wave within your heart aorta propagates, entrain your brain ventricles, the sensory and motor cortexes. The figure B below shows the position of the third and lateral ventricles, stippled areas, and the strips of tissue, hatched, that make up the sensory and motor cortices of the brain. The figure below represents a cross-section of the brain along line AB of figure B. Q. For Itzhak Bentov. What is the effect of the heart aorta propagating standing wave upon the brain? The sensory cortex and motor cortex are spanning on the 2 hemispheres of the brain along line AB shown in figure B. Bentov describes the Kundalini as a stimulus spreading along the sensory cortex and the motor cortex. To cause such a stimulus to move along the cortexes, acoustical standing waves in the cerebral ventricles are postulated. The standing waves are triggered by the heart sounds reaching the brain, and they cause vibrations in the walls of the ventricles. The ventricles are fluid-filled cavities in the brain. The vibrations that arise in the ventricles are conducted to the gray matter of the cortex, which lines the fissure between the 2 hemispheres, Fig. A. These vibrations will stimulate and eventually polarize the cortex in such a way that it will tend to conduct a signal along the homunculus, starting from the toes and up. This is shown in figure A by a line of arrows forming a closed loop. This behavior is in contrast to the way the brain normally handles a signal, which is shown by the 2 lines, one ascending to the cortex and one descending from it. The normal signal leads into the cortex at right angles to it. Stage 5. During and after your meditation, you feel stimulations in various body parts which correspond to regions in your motor and sensory cortexes which are being stimulated. Q. For Itzhak Bentov. What is the source of the physical sensations during the Kundalini awakening? When the neurons in the sensory and motor cortexes corresponding to a specific part of the body are stimulated, the individual feels a stimulus happening at this part of the body. For example, if the neurons in the sensory and motor cortexes corresponding to the knee are stimulated, the individual may feel a sensation coming from his knee. The individual has no way of knowing that the stimulus is in fact caused by his brain being artificially stimulated. Therefore, by observing the path of Kundalini within the brain, we know its path within the body and vice versa. Q. For Itzhak Bentov. What is the source of the spontaneous body motion during Kundalini? When body motion develops due to the action of the circulating stimulus current, we have to assume that there is cross-talk between the sensory cortex and the neighboring motor cortex, Fig. B. The fact that most of the described symptoms start on the left side of the body means that it is mostly a development occurring in the right hemisphere. Stage 7. During and after your meditation, you experience a constant feeling of bliss generated by the various stimulations occurring in your sensory cortex. Q. For Itzhak Bentov. What is the source of the state of bliss felt during Kundalini? The states of bliss described by those whose Kundalini symptoms have completed the full loop along the hemispheres may be explained as a self-stimulation of the pleasure centers in the brain, caused by the circulation of a current along the sensory cortex. Figure A shows pleasure centers located in the path of the current loop in both hemispheres, just below the toes of the homunculus. Stage 8. During and after your meditation, you experience sporadic localized sensations of pain in body parts which contain stored stress. Q. For Itzhak Bentov. Why should we be careful before diagnosing an individual with schizophrenia? Kundalini symptoms are similar in some cases to schizophrenia symptoms. For Bentov, at least 25% of schizophrenia cases are Kundalini cases. Q. For Itzhak Bentov. How do stress affect our potential to awaken Kundalini? Itzhak Bentov asserts that emotional stresses are imprinted on the physical body just as music is imprinted on a phonograph record. When a body is filled with stresses, the nervous system is so busy handling them that its potential for attaining higher states of consciousness is very limited. Q. For Itzhak Bentov. How to get rid of the stress accumulated within the body? Stretching, hatha yoga exercises and mild breathing exercises help to release stress from the body. I also recommend the microcosmic orbit exercise. Q. For Itzhak Bentov. In which cases do we experience Kundalini symptoms during Kundalini awakening? When Kundalini occurs, localized pain may be felt. When a person is healthy, relaxed, and generally free from psychological stress, the Kundalini symptoms go unnoticed. Only when the unfolding Kundalini reaches areas of stress in the body do the symptoms become troublesome. Therefore, a healthy individual may experience Kundalini without feeling any pain symptoms. Only bliss. The pain symptoms will persist until the stresses in that particular area of the body are released. When they are released, the Kundalini moves on until it reaches the next spot of stress in its path. The severity of symptoms is always proportional to the degree of stress encountered. Stage 9. During and after your meditation, Kundalini on its path of progression in the body stimulates nerve complexes and endocrine glands which are linked to the chakras. Q. For Itzhak Bentov. How do Kundalini activates the chakras? Fig. C. Map of Kundalini circuit. The sequence of symptoms is shown in Figure C above. Q. For Itzhak Bentov. What is the path taken by the Kundalini energy? Tradition says the Kundalini energy is an energy coiled up, like a serpent, at the base of the spine. It is known today that standing waves have the shape of two coiled serpents. When this energy is awakened, it is felt entering by the spine, rising up along it, and is seen or perceived as a luminous serpent by the person having the experience. Once it has risen into the head, the luminous rod hopefully pierces the top of the head, that is, the rod-like energy beam is seen as projecting through the skull, pointing upward. The 7 chakra centers are vivified or energized by the rising Kundalini energy. When these energy centers are energized, They affect the endocrine glands and through them our behavior and physical functioning. When this happens, the centers become receptors and distributors of inflowing cosmic energy for the body. These chakras are located near major nerve plexuses and coincide more or less with the glands of our endocrine system. As the Kundalini stimulus moves up the spine to a point facing each frontal chakra, it will be referred forward to stimulate the chakras that correspond to major nerve plexuses located in the pelvis, the solar plexus, the heart, the throat, and the head. Stage 10. During and after your meditation, the cerebro-spinal system and the autonomic nervous system are united, providing to the individual a new ability to consciously regulate his own body functions. Q. For Itzhak Bentov. What is the result of the activation of the chakra by the Kundalini? It appears that the purpose of this syndrome is to unite the cerebro-spinal and the autonomic nervous systems, thus providing for a possible control of autonomic functions like respiration, cardiac function, blood flow, etc., through the cerebrospinal system. This indeed has been shown in studies performed on yogis who could easily control body functions that in the West were thought impossible to control, for example, heartbeat, superficial blood circulation, etc. Ref 8. This is the next stage in the evolution of our nervous system, and it is a necessary correlate of spiritual development, toward which all mankind is moving. Stage 11. During and after your meditation, your nervous system matures. No more stress is stored in your body. Q. For Itzhak Bentov. Can stress still be stored in the body once Kundalini fully completes its circuit? Stress relief in the body and brain. When the Kundalini has run its course, the body is basically free of deep stresses. And since the body is reflected in the cortex, we may say that the brain is also relieved of stresses. Thus, the Kundalini is a great stress-relieving system. It will not allow the further accumulation of stress in the body. Once the full circuit is operating smoothly, stresses will be eliminated from the system as rapidly as they build up, so that no permanent accumulation of stress is possible. When the Kundalini has finally completed its circuit, it can be said that the human nervous system has achieved what is analogous to the state of puberty in the body, in the sense that it can start functioning more fully on ever higher levels of consciousness. That is, the nervous system has achieved a young adult status, and can assume a more responsible role. Stage 12. During and after your meditation, your nervous system matures and synchronizes itself with the planet Earth. The various influences of the celestial bodies upon Earth are now being felt by you in a tangible manner upon your chakras and organs. Q. For Itzhak Bentov. What happens to your body once Kundalini has fully completed its circuit? Further evolution of the nervous system occur from resonance with cosmic influences. After a while, one may find some peculiar stimulation around the solar plexus or navel areas, which may occur mostly at night, when lying on one's back, and the feeling will be that of energy flowing into the body through those areas. One may feel some internal organs being stimulated by these energies. What is happening now is that the nervous system has become sufficiently refined, so that it may enter into resonance with outside energies. These may be energies associated with the activities of the planet and the sun. Many of the electromagnetic oscillations within the planetary field occur at physiological frequencies, the rudimentary consciousness of the planet and the higher consciousness. Once a person's nervous system has developed to this point, energies provided by these high consciousnesses begin to flow automatically into the na-us system of the recipient due to a state of resonance with the above beings. This will cause further evolution of the nervous system. And eventually these consciousnesses may make themselves known in ways that are individually matched to each person's needs and abilities. Stage 13. During and after your meditation, you gain psychic abilities and extrasensory perception of information. Q. For Itzhak Bentov. What happens to the person which awakens Kundalini? When this happens, the person is said to be illuminated. Eventually, such a person may become highly intuitive and develop some psychic powers, such as clairvoyance, clairaudience, or healing abilities. Later, an unfolding of knowledge occurs that opens up broader and broader vistas about the workings of nature, so that a person starts feeling that he is very much a part, and indeed a very active part, of nature and the universe. When this happens, there is naturally a lot of excitement about these developments. It is best then for such a person to keep a calm, balanced attitude about all the goings on and not to be distracted by these occurrences. A steady routine in daily life is important. This will tend to counterbalance the more exciting events that may occur in or out of meditation.